Thank you. Hi, my name is Martin Woodward. I was just checking as people came in, just to set expectations. This session, we put it in the schedule. We're going to just have a general introduction to Team Foundation Server. We're going to cover how to get started with TFS, how to install TFS, why you might want to, those sorts of things. Some of what's new in 2010. And then we're going to whiz through some of the different features, like source control and builds, and then at the end we'll touch on to work items. The idea being, if you haven't used TFS a lot before, it'll bring everybody in the room the ability to, get up to the same level. And then the rest of the week, we've got a bunch of sessions, which is the very last slide in this deck, that'll go through and delve into more detail on Team Foundation Server. So, if this sounds like I already know TFS, I've been using it for sort of 12 months sort of thing, then feel free to leave. There's lots of other sessions on, don't worry. Just download that last slide deck and that last slide and see which other sessions to go to. Or come to the Ask the Experts area down at the basement in the exhibition hall. If you come down there to the TFS booth, we've got all the sessions for the week on the whiteboard to give you more information, or just ask the team. If anyone hasn't used the Ask the Experts areas, that's the best thing about TechEd, in my opinion, because all the people from the Microsoft product groups and things are all there, and you can just go and get your questions answered really quickly, and go and get that stuff, and then come into these sessions to learn a bit more on the detail. Okay. So I'll let everybody move around. The people that say, don't hesitate to leave if you want to. It's great. You've only got 16 sessions to go to this week, so I'd rather in the one you want to be in. Okay. So, hi, my name is Martin Woodward. There's me. For the people who are listening to the audio recording, I look as handsome as that all the time. I haven't photoshopped myself too much. That's how to get hold of me. I live in Belfast, of all places. The Team Foundation Server team are actually mostly based in a place called North Carolina, not too far from here, and then the rest of the team are based in Redmond, with the rest of Microsoft. So the Team Foundation Server team itself is split across the continent, the whole team is. And then we've got people like me. I'm on my own in the little corner there, you see, next to the battleship. That's where I sit. Actually, that big dry dock you can see, that thing there, that's actually where they built the Titanic. So, don't let that worry you. It was fine when we last touched it, I promise. But, that was where they built the Titanic. So we're all spread around the world. We're all working on TFS. And that's an important thing to understand why Team Foundation Server works very well over wide area networks, over the internet and, using internet-based protocols, and it handles latency well. Because the team that built it are split across the entire continent of the States, and we've got people in China and India and all over the world. So we eat our own dog food, which is a horrible Microsoft expression, but we do, and so there's a bunch of features which were put into TFS just to make it work really well remotely. I work on the Team Foundation Server team itself. I'm a program manager for the Team Foundation Server team. So, but I do check in code as well. I don't let the word manager scare you. I actually manage the program, not people. I don't have anyone reporting to me, so I am a developer. And I co-authored a couple of books as well, available from all good bookstores on Amazon. So, there we go. My co-authors wrote all the good chapters. I wrote the ones you don't like, so probably. Right, before we actually get started, one of the things, as I mentioned, we're going to do today is we're going to install Team Foundation Server. Who's installed Team Foundation Server before? Okay. Was that an easy, painless exercise? Okay, cool. In 2008 and in previous versions of Team Foundation Server, anyone installed one of those before? Was that an easy and painless exercise? Lots of shaking of heads for the audio recording. So let's show you what it's like to install Team Foundation Server now. So I could do it myself, that'd be too easy. So I'd like a volunteer. Who would like to install TFS live on stage in front of everybody? Anybody feel like putting their hands up? Go on, raise your hands. Anyone? Hey, we got one. There we go. Big round of applause. Have you ever installed TFS before? Okay, right then. What's your name, sir? Chris. Welcome, Chris. Good to meet you. Right, and so here we are. Here's Team Foundation Server. So there's a setup screen. So off you go. Oh, what I've done is, this is a Windows 7 laptop running Windows 7, 32-bit I'm running. You can install TFS on 32 or 64-bit now. So I'll let you get started. So, you know, it's a wizard that does the usual stuff. So you come along here, press next, oh, there we go. He's actually reading them. There we are, yeah. I thought I was going to catch you there. I had a bunch of jokes prepared when you ignored that. So what we want to do now is we want to install the Team Foundation Server components. And if we just install all of them, we're going to install the build servers as well. So, yep, that'll do. And then hit install. Okay. Now you notice it says there, install and then critical fix. We actually found after we'd released the Team Foundation Server 2010, we found in a couple of cases where people had been upgrading from TFS 2005 or TFS 2008, we found an issue, which isn't great for a version control tool. So we actually went back and fixed the media that TFS was shipped on and added a fix to this particular bug, because you don't want that when you install it. That's not a good install experience. So yeah, so that's what we do. Okay, so sir, I used to work for an airline before I joined Microsoft, so a few habits die hard. You know, for instance, the emergency exits are located here and here. And here's a whistle for attracting attention, Chris. So I'm going to go off and blather on while that's installing. So can I give you that? There you go. Sure. And just give that a blow when it's finished and we're on to the next step, because people don't want to see a scroll bar for a while. Okay, so it's, look at that, it's already on to the critical fix. Wow. Okay. So Team Foundation Server used to be, require a server, SQL Server, quite a complex integration because there's lots of little moving parts between, say, SharePoint and reporting services. And, for big portfolios of projects, so things like, lots of big teams. That's what it was kind of designed for big teams. In 2010, we did a bunch of work. So we still support the advanced scenarios, and inside Microsoft, we still run an advanced setup, but we also can support a more basic setup. So a laptop we can run on top of SQL Express. It's actually will install. If you don't have SQL Server installed to point to, you can point it to any SQL Server database, 2008 database. Then it'll install SQL Express for you. So that has some limitations, obviously. If you want to pay for the version of SQL and get all the features of SQL, then you're more than welcome to. And again, support smaller projects, support lone developers. It even installs IIS for you, if you need to. Okay. So the question I have, why aren't you using TFS already? What's holding people back? When I was having a quick chat just before we came in, a few sort of different areas that people came up with were some of these. Do these sound familiar? Okay. So now hopefully by the end of today, the goal of this session is to prove that it's neither of these. Okay, none of these. We're already seeing it doesn't require a server. We're installing there on Windows 7. Hopefully we can show you it's not complex. There's no brain surgery. If it was complex, then I wouldn't be able to work on it, And I'm a developer. I'm not a marketing guy. So hopefully as well we'll prove it's not too expensive. So you're thinking a bit longer than normal. So anyway, let's keep on going when the whistle blows. Ooh, hello. Right, here we are. Let's take the first one for you. It's too expensive. You don't need to blow a whistle. There we go. So just quickly show you where we're at. Yeah. Ah! There we go. Right. So what we've done here is the way TFS installs. You install the bits first. That's what we've just done. It's a bit like SharePoint. You install the bits first, and then you configure your TFS server. So if we go into configure, and then we're going to do a basic installation. So let's start the basic installation wizard. And, bunch of stuff. So blah, blah, blah. Don't bother ticking that because I'm not on the internet with this machine. So, oh well, we'll find out. Right then. So that's the, normally though, if you do want to send us feedback, that would be great, because we actually do use all that feedback. So we're going to use, I installed Visual Studio before we got started. So in Visual Studio, install SQL Express as part of it. Like I say, it would have installed it for us if we didn't have it. So yeah. And so it's going to use my existing SQL Express instance. That's fine. And then off we go. So it's now, this is an important difference between 2008 and 2010. You see here, it's already completed a bunch of readiness checks. So it goes ahead and checks all the different settings for you and this and that, and make sure it's all going to work before it then tries to install it. You wait 4 hours and find out you forgot to set a port or something like that. So hit configure. It's annoying how configure isn't where the next button was, isn't it? You just hit da-da-da-da-da. Right, and as you notice, the first thing it's doing is actually installing IIS. This was just my laptop, so it doesn't have IIS on because I don't do much ASP.NET development, so it just didn't have IIS. So it's actually installing IIS for me as well and getting it configured to do all the ASP.NET and all that sort of stuff. Cool. And it's going to do the databases and create a project collection. So, okay. Oops, I just advanced my slide deck then. There we are. Right. In 2010, Team Foundation Server is included in your MSDN subscription. Who's got MSDN subscriptions here? You've all got TFS already. Everyone. Who hasn't got an MSDN subscription here? Wow, cool. There you go. So you've all got TFS, you've already bought it, you've already paid for it. So it's not very expensive for you guys. And now in the old version, in 2008, that was like a limited, 5-user workgroup edition. In 2010, it's the full TFS. We've just simplified things. Have TFS. But the way it works is it's on a client access license basis, so you pay per user who connects to TFS. So if everybody in your development team has MSDN, you all have what's called a TFS client access license. Again, I'm a developer, I'm not a licensing guy. So you already can connect into TFS with that. However, if you don't have MSDN subscriptions, and there were 3 or 4 people who didn't, then you can actually buy the product for $4.99 apparently, and it comes with 5 users, and then you can buy client access licenses, so buy new seats for TFS for a little bit more. That's actually cheaper than SourceSafe retails for right now, by the way. So, okay, so let's talk about complexity. As you notice, we've got this new configuration wizard. Previously, there was a bunch of command line, blah, 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 and do this, do that, and actually we're going to show you some command line stuff. So we haven't got rid of a command line completely, but we've got a whole new administration interface. You can go in, reconfigure things. If you don't get things installed quite right, how you want them, then you can go back, and change settings from a user interface rather than from a command line. Crazy stuff, but there you go. We do have some PowerShell commandlets as well installed in the Power Tools if you want to use those. And we've also removed the requirement for SharePoint and SQL reporting services. In older versions, we forced you to have a SQL Server with SQL Server reporting services already installed. We forced you to have SharePoint services or MOS already installed. And it was those prerequisites that we found took a lot of people's time. And to be honest, not everybody needed reporting to get started. Not everybody needed SharePoint, or they already had a SharePoint server they wanted to use. They didn't want to install a new one on top of TFS. So we've made that a lot simpler. You can get it installed as we're doing here, and then you can go back later and point them at SharePoint and point them at reporting services if you want to. Or you can do it all, and we've still got the big install guide. You can still go through and install the prerequisites. We're just trying to make it a lot more flexible and support lots of different ways of working. And then requires a server. Okay, it doesn't. Not only can it install on client operating systems, so we've gone down the stack. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Go on then. Ready? Let's have a big ta-da moment. Hit next. Ta-da! You're done. Thank you, Chris. So there we go. TFS installed. Hang on, Chris. Wait there. Chris, wait there. So thanks for being a good sport. Here's a copy of the Professional Team Foundation Server book. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris. So you see, installing TFS is dead easy. Look at that. Cool, that was good. What we're actually going to do as well as installing the server, anyone here do build automation today? Who uses build automation, like cruise control or TFS or something? Okay, a few hands. We're going to set up a build server. Now, I could have got Chris to do this, but unfortunately, it's even too easy for Chris to do. So I'll come in here, I'll hit next, he says. That normally is an instant. Oh, there we go. Demo gods. We'll come in and we're actually going to set up a build automation server ready and waiting for us to use. So you just go through, yeah, next, review, readiness check, brilliant, hit configure, off it goes. That's going to install the build service for us as well. Now you see, we're installing these pieces, we're installing them all on this one machine here, as well as doing, basic installations. We also, so hit close. We also enabled scaling up. So we enabled much more complicated load balanced farms and, we can have clusters of application tiers. So I'm doing an administration talk on Thursday. And in there, we're going to go into some of the infrastructure things. Something like Coplex runs they've got 2.5 million, users. They run that on 4 virtual machines, I believe, but, it's scaled out. So it can scale out as well as scale down. We just tried to make it more simple. We run on x64 versions of Windows, finally. We didn't in the first release, we do now. And we actually actively support Java development. That's actually what I do. I write the Eclipse and cross-platform access for Team Foundation Server. So it's not just your .NET teams, it's everybody. Okay. So who's on SourceSafe? Raise your hands. Who's not using version control at all? Okay. That's the next most common version control, by the way, is not using any. Who's using, say, Subversion? ClearCase, PVCS, TFS. Okay. Vast majority of people are using SourceSafe. It's fine. We're going to cover how to get from SourceSafe into TFS because we find that with a lot of our customers, that's where they're coming from. So we ship out the box with a SourceSafe converter. Chris just installed it actually for us, so that's nice of him. So we're going to go use that. And you can take your SourceSafe repository and migrate it over into TFS. Now, my bit of advice is you could just take your entire SourceSafe repository and stick it in TFS. It's one way of working. Or you could use more like an X-Acto knife approach, a craft knife approach, and take bits across, like a project from here and put it here in TFS and try and use that to reorganize some of your source code a bit as well and tidy things up. I would personally recommend that way of going. And we'll show you how you configure things, and you can see you can be very precise when you're doing it. So we can migrate, and what we do is we define the migration in this XML file. Remember I was saying we've got rid of a bunch of command line tools? Well, we haven't completely got rid of command line tools in XML. This one is, unfortunately, a bit of a hacking around at the low level. So we'll go and configure some XML settings. And then also, you might have users that were in your SourceSafe repository that have long left the company and moved on to pastures new, are not there anymore. So we've got a user map which allows you to configure usernames and how those usernames will translate to users in TFS, if it's a user that doesn't exist and things like that, what you want to do. So you define those two files, you pass them to the VSS converter command line tool, you let it jiggle a little bit like that and process, and then it's imported in. Now on a simple project, it's very quick. We're going to show it you now on a simple project. I've worked on a project, the project when I originally came to Team Foundation Server in 2005. That was gigabytes of data, and tens of, 10 years maybe of history. That took a weekend to import. That took a long time. My recommendation again about being small and migrating over bits at a time is that you also will migrate. You get more progress. You can move teams over slowly. You don't have to do the whole lot in one big go. So it's just a lot more recoverable. Okay, so let's migrate over from SourceSafe. So if I go over onto my demo machine, I'm back. This is the administration console. this is where it sticks you when you've installed TFS. So, and then go configure things and go change stuff if I want to. But you see, it's a fancy graphical interface, even has pictures. So there we go. Let's get out of that. Let's go and use the, remember I talked about a settings file? Here's the settings file we talked about. So we tell it which database we want to import. Again, we can have multiple ones of these. We specify the user map. We then tell it, again, we can do multiple ones. You notice I've got one commented out there. We tell it where we want to take the source from. In this case, if I fire up SourceSafe, we want to take it from here, calculator root calculator. That's where my solution file is. And we want to move that into a new project on TFS. But before we do that, it would help actually if I came in, let's go into Visual Studio, and I'll actually create a project to put it into. That would be better. So here we go. Inside of Visual Studio, come in, and I'm going to connect to Team Foundation Server. So when you install Visual Studio 2010, you get Team Explorer window. If that's gone because you've never needed it before, just go to View Team Explorer, and it'll bring it back up again. And then you click on this little button here, Connect to Team Project, or you can say there on the Start menu, Connect to Team Foundation Server. You tell it which server you want. Now, because I installed it on my same machine, it knows it's there already, but otherwise you would go in here and add it, and you just type the machine name in there, and it'll find, it'll tell it which server you want to talk to. So this is it talking to TFS, and wake up the TFS instance. And then it's going to see what team project collections we have, and then from those team project collections, we're going to then create a team project. And I'm just going to cancel that and go back in, because it seems to be taking its time. There we go. Okay, I'll give that a second to think. There we go. So, and I don't currently have any team projects, so I'll just hit connect. That's because I haven't created one yet. So, lots of words. Team Foundation Server, the server you installed. A team project is a project area on that server that you want to work in. Usually, a team project is not a solution file. You would normally have multiple solutions in a team project. It's a team. So if your entire company is 5 people all working on one product, you'll probably only need one team project. If you've got multiple departments, then maybe they're in different team projects. You know what I mean? It's generally bigger than you think. A team project, if you think about a requirement and how big a requirement for your system can spread, which teams does it involve, that's a good idea as to who should be in the same team project. Because a requirement is a child of team project, if you think a feature, a story. So let's create a team project. Again, this used to take a while. It's getting a lot faster, but we'll see. So we'll create one called Contoso. Pick a process template. This gives you definitions as to how you want to work. TFS has a notion of work items and a life cycle for managing work. If you're not sure, pick Agile, okay? And then we have a bunch of them, you can download them, but if you're not sure, when you're having a play, go for Agile. It's the most lightweight, flexible one we have. The most heavyweight one we have, really, is probably the Scrum template, which sounds bizarre, but because it's a proper process. It's Scrum by the Scrum book. You have to document requirements in user stories, all this sort of thing, and product backlog items or whatever, I can't even remember. You create tasks, you blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. It follows the Scrum process exactly. So, go for Agile if you're not sure. And there we go, hit finish, and that's going to create a team project for me. And that works by downloading the process template, which controls what's in a team project, and then it goes and creates the work items and modifies the server to do it for me. If you're playing with TFS, a good idea, I'm actually running in a virtual machine here, and I'd recommend that when you're playing, just install it in a VM, have a play, connect to it, get to understand it. Because before you know it, A, you are now the TFS administrator for your entire company, because you will not touch it last. And B, you want to understand the system properly before you start pulling people on board, so have a play in a virtual machine. So that works, there's Contoso. So now let's bring that source code in from SourceSafe into Contoso. So we see here, I'm going to take it from there. Now you notice I'm going to create a folder called main, and then I'm going to put it in calculator. Why main, you might ask? That's because TFS has a huge set of branch and merge functionality. You might never want to branch. Before I joined Microsoft, I'd branched twice in my entire life, you know? It's not uncommon. A perfectly sound branching strategy is to not branch, okay? Don't feel like you have to. It's to enable parallel development, but with it, a branch is like a puppy. It needs a little bit of care and attention, otherwise, you know, it gets a bit sick. So every one that you create has a certain responsibility in terms of keeping that branch alive. So start off, don't branch. But if you create everything in the main folder, it makes it a lot easier later to branch, and I'll show you how much easier that makes it. So a little top tip for you, create a main folder first before you let anyone check in. So we'll do that. That's going to do it for us as we do it, and we'll tell it which Team Foundation server to use, the one I've got locally. So then to run it, you need to run a Visual Studio command prompt with administrator rights to run the VSS convert utility. You only need admin rights to actually installing it on the box. I would actually recommend, normally, you know, if you're installing TFS on a server somewhere, don't run the VSS import utility on the same machine as TFS, because the convert utility is trying to convert really fast, and the TFS is trying to process those requests really fast, and they kind of slow each other down a bit. So it's actually faster if you run it off, you know, on a different box, hopefully with a good network connection to your TFS server. So, and all we do is we just, the first thing we do is we type VSS converter analyze, and then we pass it our settings file. So in fact, if I'm actually, I've got my A drive, I've got it installed in a virtual floppy disk. So if we have a look here, I've got my settings file there. So VSS converter, oops, sorry. And the first thing I want to do is analyze. This looks at the VSS instance, it looks at your settings, and just make sure everything's good, you know? It's just a quick sense check for you. So, and the first thing it's done is told me that the log files that it's going to dump the reports into already exist, because I was just doing that, practicing. There we go, so I'll get rid of those, get rid of that as well. There we are. Right then, let's try again. Okay, that was good. It stopped me making a mistake. The output file, user map, already exists. So there we go. No. Yeah, there we are. Right then, there we are. This is great. Okay, this is checking things. What's my admin password? And then it's going to check. Notice it says warnings 1. Uh-oh, what's the warning? No errors though, which is good. So if we look at my warnings, we can actually see it says, hey, by the way, I have calculator SLN. It was already bound to SourceSafe. I'm going to go in, edit that file, and change the bindings and get it to be bound to TFS instead. So that's good. That's what you want to happen. So, yep. Don't even know why that's a warning, to be honest. There we go. That's great. So I'm now going to, rather than analyze, let's do a migrate. And it comes in here, and it does a migrate. So if we quickly look back into SourceSafe, I'll quickly show you. If we look at the history of, say, let's go in and we'll pick a file in, I know, simplemath.cs. If we go do a view history on that, you can see here it's got a bunch of, you know, versions, 1, 2, 3, as you would expect versions to be. An interesting thing to note with SourceSafe is when if you check in 10 files, it checks them in one at a time. So it checks in the first one, good, checks in the second one, good, checks in the third one. TFS doesn't work like that. TFS works in a notion of a change set, which is a transaction of check-in. So you've got 10 files, it'll check in all 10 files in one transaction. And that's important because if you fail halfway through the check-in, you've only done 5 out of 10. Because you need to do a merge, you know, maybe somebody else has changed the file while you were working on it. Then that's rubbish, because now you've checked in 5 of the files. Some of those files you've already checked in might refer to changes which haven't been checked in yet in SourceSafe. Because TFS does it as a transaction, if this check-in's not going to happen, as a single thing, then it doesn't get in at all. No changes get in at all. So that's why transactions are a good thing. Change sets are a good thing. But it's different. So important difference to be aware of. So it's done the import. Oops, I forgot to hit yes. There we go. So it's going to do the import, and it'll do it quite fast. There we go. What it'll actually do here is it'll look for, hey, these check-ins were done really close together in a related area. This was probably a single check-in, a single transaction, and it'll actually try and flatten those check-ins down into discrete check-in events, into discrete change sets. So to show you that, if I go now and have a look at my source control system, so here we have. Now notice, because I was using SourceSafe previously, it actually said, hey, Team Foundation Server, this is a usability feature we added in 2010. People would get it installed, go through all the days of work installing it, and then go, I can't see it, it's still pointing to SourceSafe. So we just put, hey, if you want to use TFS, you need to change this option here to be TFS. So you can get into that by going to tools, options, and get down to the same place. So there's TFS. Lovely, we're using TFS now. Great. So we see there's that main folder we created. There's the calculator project, and there's all the stuff. If I do a view history on here, we can see by default histories are recursive when you do a view history in TFS. And you see these are all the check-ins it did. Now notice the way it works, you can actually see it's got the time and date is right now. Yeah? Because it's done all the check-ins one after another, very fast. But in the comment, it's actually putting here the time and date it was originally checked in and who by, well, if it's not in the user map. So that's how it imports. The history is shrunk when you look at it in the dates. From now on, it'll be the right dates and times, but it shrinks it down. TFS is fanatical at recording the exact date that you did something at in universal time. This is how it actually gets stored under the hood and again converted into local time zones. I don't know if you've run into a problem with SourceSafe where if you have people in different time zones checking things in, it can cause issues. Things start to come in before they ever happened and stuff like that. TFS doesn't have any of those problems. It's a full modern source control system, state-of-the-art, that was written from the ground up to support distributed development. Okay? And if actually I double click on one of these, so say add classes ABC, we can actually see in that single check-in, which all had the same comment, obviously when I checked it in, it's noticed that I checked in 4 files, so it's grouped them together in a single transaction, which is pretty neat. But also notice, if I go back here, and I go look at that same file, the simple math, and look at view history, we see it had 3 changes still, but notice the change set numbers. It's not 1, 2, 3, it's 6, 23, 24. Huh? That's because it's the change set. Files are not individually versioned. Files are versioned by the change set in which they were changed in TFS. A change set representing a unique point in time in the life of the server, transactions. So that individual files aren't versioned 1, 2, 3, 4 anymore, and so you get big jumps like that. That makes sense to me now, because I've been using TFS for years, but when I first used TFS and looked at that, I was like, well, how are versions 6 to 23 gone? So it's one of those things you need to get used to. Notice as well, I don't think we had a label which was the latest version when we did the import. That's there and imported as a label, and labels are now in Team Foundation Server 2010 here right in front of your face with change sets. Because the way a label in TFS is very different to a label in SourceSafe. A label is more like a tag, edit. So there we go. So I'm going to come in here and let's go do some version control stuff. So we're going to go through and let's just map this. So we're going to get our project. I like to have all my projects actually on a folder called projects on the root of my hard drive. And we'll create this one called, Contoso. Projects, Contoso, that's right. We'll map it. So our mapping is, take a server binding, a server location, and tell it where on the local hard drive you want those files stored. Map, yep. Okay. So we'll map, and then why did it just jump to there? Let's exit that. There we go. Okay. So I've mapped it, I've done a get. Notice a new feature in 2010, you see this here? You can actually click on it and go straight to where the source is in Windows Explorer, which is pretty nice. So we'll go to main and then calculator, and if we double click on calculator SLN, it'll actually bring our solution into Visual Studio. So that's me opened, and now you notice I've got, let's just make this a bit bigger. I've got some little padlocks here. The way Team Foundation Server works is similar to SourceSafe in that when you initially get the files from TFS, those files are read-only locally. And then you need to check out the file before you can edit it. And a checkout is actually saying to the server, hey, I would like to edit calc.ico or, simplemath.cs, something like that. I'd like to edit this file, please. It then checks your server permissions, checks that it checks if anyone else is editing it. If they are editing it, have they put a lock on the file? By default, files don't have locks on in TFS. You can change it so they do. But by default, it lets you have two people edit that same file at the same time. That's a good thing, because who's run into the situation where you've got, say, a VB-proj file or a CS-proj file in SourceSafe? Two people have tried to add a new file into Visual Studio, and one of them could check out the CS-proj file, one of them couldn't, so they went and set it readable, read-write locally, so they could do their work. And then when it comes to check-in, they completely forgot, and they forget, and then that file doesn't appear, and it causes chaos. It's good to have people being able to work on the same files at the same time. What happens is when the second person goes to check in, they are then responsible for merging their changes with what changes the first person did if they were both working on it on the same time. And it gives you some good merge functionality to be able to do that. So if I come in here, you don't really need to care about that, because if I just come in and let's see, it's going to say simple math here, and I might want to add a comment or something like that. I don't know, basic, add a comment. You can see that it automatically just checked the file out for me when I was typing. It's now got a little tick against it. So I didn't have to do anything, it just did it. So no jumping out into another application, check out, blah, blah, blah. It's all about being productive. It just does it for you. Not only that, if you go up to here and you go View, Other Windows, Pending Changes, there we go. We can see which files I'm working on. Again, none of that, in Visual SourceSafe, you had to go View, Search, Recursive by Me, blah, 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 blah. Question, sir? So the question was, sometimes when you add a breakpoint, it sometimes checks out the file. I haven't seen that myself, so if we come over to the booth area, I'd love to try and understand why that's happening, because yeah, it's not doing it there. So we'll talk about that. If you come over to the booth, we'll have a look at that. I haven't heard that one before. Okay, so there we go. And notice if I go and edit the unit tests as well at the same time. So again, I'll just add a bit of a comment to here. It's keeping a list of the files I'm working on. It also would keep a file, if I come here and I renamed class C, and I rename it to be class D. It's clever enough, yes, I'd like to do a refactor, please. It's clever enough to, let's just open it, you see it's renamed that to class D, which is you would expect. But notice down here, it's also storing the rename as a pending change. SourceSafe didn't do that. It would do rename straight away and move straight away. A rename is part of your transaction of change, so it gets stored as a pending change as well. So there we go, and we'll just do a check-in. So you provide a comment, initial version. You can set rules up to force people. It's called check-in policies. So you can set a check-in policy to force somebody to associate a comment if you want to. And then we'll just hit check-in. Yep, I'd like to save changes to all those. Yes, please. Don't prompt again. And there we go. Okay. So that's very basic version control. Let me just jump back to the deck. And we'll go in. So, yep, we did SourceSafe. Oh, yeah, one thing I want to show you. If you don't want to migrate to Some people don't want to bring all that baggage with them. They want to just leave their old tool like SourceSafe or Subversion or something in the corner and just use it for history and just use, go back if we need to. But let's make a clean break. We're doing it, let's move forwards. And we've had a lot of customers that want to do that. So we made that even easier to do. So, for instance, we also have a migration toolkit, which will allow you to integrate other tools, and we have partners that can provide plugins as well for other version control tools. So that the migrate thing, I just wanted to quickly show you because I didn't show you when I was doing the demo. If you had, for instance, a project that wasn't bound in source control, so I'll go down here. So that Hello World one isn't. So if I use a fancy feature in Windows 7, there we go, snap. And then I'll come over here, and again, Windows 7, snap. Lovely. Right then. So if I go to Source Control Explorer, Source Control, I can just take this folder, this Hello World folder, and I want to put it into main. So I just take it, drag it from Explorer, go over here, he says, there we go, drop it on the main folder, and then it'll say, oh, do you want to do an ad? Yes, please. So I'll hit finish. And then I'll build up an ad. And now remember, we have transactions, we have chain sets in TFS. So all those check-ins are not actually committed until you check them in, until you check in the ads. So say there, check in. Great. So that was just drag dropping some files in. Okay. So when SourceSafe came out in 1994, it was the state of the art in terms of version control systems, but state of the art moves on. Microsoft is investing heavily in Team Foundation Server. This is where our source control efforts are going for now and in the future. And it contained from the day one, checking state-of-the-art features like the branching and merging stuff, all the version control features you would expect, the notion of atomic check-ins, the notion of working in time zones, the notion of working well over the internet, that sort of thing. It also has check-in policies, which we talked about. Again, in the admin section at the end of the week, we'll cover more about check-in policies. And nice, easy-to-use interface, fairly friendly. And we also, by being built into Visual Studio, and this is kind of a defining sort of concept in TFS. This is one of the fundamental things we try and do is put it in your face inside the IDE. So source control is there. You don't have to leave the IDE. Tracking work is there. Tracking builds is there, all in the IDE. You don't have to jump around systems. A question, sir? So the question was, how does TF work in an offline scenario? In TFS 2005 and 2008, very badly was the answer. It would hang for a while. We've done a lot of work around supporting offline scenarios today in terms of it can detect changes that were done offline. We're doing a lot more investment in offline functionality. But the truth is that TFS is it's quite an online protocol. So if you're in an environment where you want to develop for 6 months of the year without ever talking to the server and then come in and push all those changes into TFS, then it's probably not the right solution. It's for occasionally disconnected development, it works well, fine. But if it's permanently disconnected, then you might need to look at where you want TFS servers and things like that. Does that answer your question? I'm just going to move on and then we'll come back to it. We've got plenty of time for questions, and I'm down at the booth, so I'll move on a wee bit. We also have clip support. I work on that. I can quickly show you that. And one thing I wanted to mention, we have this thing called a MSSCCI provider. MISCI is how that's pronounced. So a MISCI provider allows you to talk to Team Foundation Server from things that didn't know about Team Foundation Server. So VB6, SQL tools, Access, lots of third-party products as well use MISCI. MISCI was an interface we designed for SourceSafe. We've made it, we've enabled a MISCI provider for TFS. So between Eclipse and the MISCI, that's actually, vast majority of developers in the world are covered with a connection to TFS in their IDE from just having these. Okay, let's have a play with some more of the version control features. So we were showing you drag drop. I'll quickly show you, if we go into Solution Explorer, if I right click on, say, Simple Math, and I do Show History, and then you can see there, you can control click on a couple of different versions, do a compare, and bring that up, and it shows you the differences between them, just all sorts of things you'd expect, really. Quite easy. You can also, if I go Open Simple Math, I can come in here, let's make this bigger, Shift Alt Enter, is that right? There we go. I can right click in here and say Source Control Annotate. Another name for annotate is blame. Annotate's a bit more politically correct. But if you're looking at a line and saying, who on earth did this? Why did it do that? You can actually see all the different change sets here where that change was made. And look at it and you go, why on earth did it do that? And then you go click on the change set details and you can actually see that checking was done as part of a bigger change. And oh, I see now. Why? I see. So annotate's quite a neat little feature. Annotate. What else did I want to quickly show you? Yeah, so remember Source Control Explorer? In here, we can drag drop, we can click on something. I've installed what's called the Team Foundation Server Power Tools. I installed that before you came in. On the Team Foundation Server Power Tools adds another feature, which is quite neat, which is shell extensions. So Windows Explorer extensions. You see, you've got a little green thing there. That's because this file is in TFS. If I right-click on that file and go to Team Foundation Server, look at this. I'm not even inside Visual Studio, and here I am. I can do all my source control stuff from Windows Explorer. Again, that's a really neat feature and helps people, use it who aren't in Visual Studio all day long. The other people who might not be in Visual Studio all day long are, say, the Eclipse guys. And if I quickly come in here, let's just check in a project from Eclipse. While that's firing up, I'm going to go a bit fast. I'm going to go fast now and go through some of these features. Remember I said we'll create a folder called main. What if we wanted, actually no, sorry, before I do that, let me just come in here. This is Eclipse, this is Java, by the way. Ooh, who lives in a place where they're not .NET isn't the only language spoke? Who lives in places, okay, there you go. It's no good having a system where you can store all your source code and all your work if everybody can't join in. Microsoft recognized that, and we have a full-time team committed to making the Java experience really good. We just released this morning a TFS software development kit for Java. So if you want to write a Java program which talks to TFS, we've got all that available for you. And all this Eclipse extension is all fully extensible. So it's completely open. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add this into TFS. I'm going to add it into my local host machine. Hit next. Going to communicate. There we go. Click on that. I want it in Contoso, please. Whereabouts in Contoso do you want it? Well, I'd quite like it in the main folder for now. Okay, hit next. There we go. Hit finish. And this is now adding my Java project into TFS. You see here, oops, daisy. There we go. See here, I've got all my ads. So I can do initial version. Hit check in. Now I'm checking in from Eclipse into TFS. Not just Eclipse, Java as well, so Eclipse anywhere, the Mac, Linux, wherever, it just works. So that's those two things checked in. If I then come into here, there's our main folder. I'll just hit refresh, just so there's the billing service I just added in. I can now right-click on that main folder and say convert to branch. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make it a branch. There we go. Okay. And then now you notice in TFS 2010, branches are now a first-class citizen. If a folder is a branch, you get a little branch icon. It gets some extra metadata. Doesn't make that much difference because I've only got one branch today. What if I want to then branch it? A branch is a copy of the source code stored in a different place on the server, so you can have two people working on that source in different places at the same time. So you'd have two teams of developers, not just two people, two teams. So you could have a team working on a new shiny feature while your other team goes and works on the main stuff. If it looks like this shiny feature is going to work, then that team can merge their code from their branch over into the main code. Yes, sir? It's a lightweight branching model. So when it takes a branch, it doesn't copy all the files over and blah, blah, blah. It just points to the file. So it's good with storage and things like that. Yeah, there we go. And just to show you how fast the branching is, I can say here, branch. So I've got two different solutions in a Java project. I'll say branch, and I'll create a folder called releases. Another time you might want to use branching is if you're going to do like, you're going to ship version 1, you're going to keep on working on version 2 while version 1's out there, but somebody might have a problem with version 1 out in the real world. You need to go quickly into that source code, fix it, ship them a new version, but you don't want any of those changes that you've been working on in version 2 making it into that. So we'll branch for version 1, and yep. Right, cool, it branched. Nice, that was fairly lightweight. And then, just 1 second, sorry. And I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to do another quick branch again. Releases /v 2.0. So I'm just going to create a couple of branches. Yep. So now we can see here I've got a folder called releases with 2 branches in, and inside of those is all that the stuff we were working on. You see that? That's all very well and good, but what happens if you get to a source base that has a bunch of branches in it and you don't really understand, is V1, was V2 branched from V1, or that sort of thing. So what we added in 2010 was this neat new feature of branch visualization, we call it. So if we come in here and we can, branching and merging, view hierarchy. So I can right-click on a branch and see with a nice pretty picture that branch 1 and branch 2 were both related off main. Which is quite nice, isn't it? Gets even better, actually. If I go into main, so I'm currently got main checked out, and again, let's just make some changes. So class A, we'll edit a line. Let's edit a couple of things here. Let's go edit some stuff in class D. We'll maybe edit line 1 and delete line 2. There we go. So we made a couple of changes. Some changes, yeah. And then actually, we'll come in here and we'll make another change in class D. Okay, some helpful comments as usual. So there we have a bunch of changes. They're in main. So if I might now look at history of class D, right-click here, source control, view history. How do I know where that change set went to? This change I did, change set 31, where is that? Did that make it into the version 1 branch? I can't remember. So you can come here and do track change set, and then you can say which branches you want to check to view them. I'm going to view them all. It's a bit funky this, but there we go, hit visualize. And we can see, all right, those changes are just in that main branch. You know what? I'd quite like to merge them into V1. So you drag and drop, and you say, yeah, I'm going to merge all changes from there. It actually was just going to merge that change that I was tracking, but I'm going to merge everything. So there, hit merge. There you go. Now it's doing a merge. If you want to, you can right-click on here, compare with latest version, just to see what the merge is actually going to do. Always nice to reassure yourself what the program thinks is merging correctly. So there we go. And then check in. Merge. Now again, merge isn't a particularly helpful comment, merge. So if I right-click on here, do source control, and do view history again, we can see we've got edit, rename, blah, blah, blah. Oops, I'm on main, aren't I? Sorry, hang on. Let's go to source control explorer. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go into let's just get these, so I've got them if I want to play with them. I've got calculator, what was it? Calculator, no, it's class D, wasn't it? There we go. View history on that. We can see there's the merge and there's the branch. Well, cheers. That's all you would get in 2008. Not very helpful, because what was merged and what was branched? Well, if you click on the little, you see the little twisty? If you click on the little twisty, and there you go. There's 2 edits, and you can go look. I can even go compare. Oh, that was when it was renamed. This is a mad. And then I did a delete. I can compare the current version with the version in a completely different branch when it had a completely different name, and see what changed. It just figures it out. It's pretty neat. Okay. If you want to know more about branching and merging, there's an hour-and-a-half long session from Jeff Levinson on that as well later on in the week. So, jump back to the deck. Okay, source control. So state-of-the-art version control. If you're just using TFS for version control, then you're doing it wrong. Okay? TFS has got a bunch of other features. You've already owned TFS for free. You've already got version control. Why don't you use some of these other things we've got? We've got build automation and we've got work item tracking. Build automation. Only a few hands up who are people who are automatically doing builds. Just to recap, there's a whole talk about this by Brian Randall on Thursday, Dev 310. But build automation is being able to do a team build, and build is on the server. It's not just the F5 button locally. You know, it's making builds as easy as pressing F5, but doing it all on the server so that the team shares a common build infrastructure, and that builds are repeatable, builds are automatic. You get feedback if it's a good build, if every check-in results in a good build or not. That's all what build automation gives you. We support out-the-box continuous integration. We support continuous integration like some people do, where they poll the server and see, has there been a change yet? Has there been a change yet? You know, and merge the changes over 10 minutes and do a build. Well, because we've got build so tightly integrated with source control, because it's TFS, it can actually run a build every single time you check in. So every single time a developer checks in, it kicks off a build. And that way it's really easy to tell who broke the build, who checked in code that doesn't compile, you know? It's got their name on it. Sorry. It sends an email to them and the team and the whole team, you know? It can create a work item, raise a bug, then do flashing lights. I actually did a talk a couple of years ago where I made a little robot rabbit dance and his ears go all sad if the build broke, that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's good. And the advantage of doing the build on the server is that you can automate stuff. You can make it run unit tests every time you do a build. You can make it package things up into MSI files and ISO images and all that sort of stuff. You can just customize them. Again, Dev 310, Brian Randall, if you want to know more about builds. But let's quickly show you how easy it is to do a build. I believe that's my demo. Woohoo! It's like I rehearsed. So we'll come in here, and I'll do builds. And you see I've got a builds node here in Visual Studio. I'll go new build definition. It then brings us up the window in an editor. And we'll come in and we'll give it a build definition name. So we'll say we're going to do a continuous integration build. So build on every check-in. I'll come back to those in a second. What actually do we want to build? I'm not going to build billing service. It looked at my local workspace to try and figure out what I wanted to build. All I want to build actually is just the calculator. How do you want to build it? Where do you want to put the results? So I'm going to put them on MWVS 2010, which is this local machine. I've got a shared folder. So this allows you to store the results on a file share somewhere for you, and it manages those for you. The process, so what do you want to build? I want to build that solution file. I want to run those unit tests. That's how I want my build numbers. If I want a different type of build number format, I can come in here and customize it to my heart's content. This has all been hugely improved in 2010, the build automation functionality. Again, with Brian Randall will tell you more about that. So that's a build, but there you go, I've done a build. Right-click, Q new build. I'm just going to test it, hit Q, and off it goes. It's going to run a build. Hopefully that'll work. Notice you can do exactly the same stuff if I go into Eclipse. So if I'm a Java guy, I can go Window, Show View, Other, Team Foundation Server, Team Explorer. There we go. Let's drag that over here. Lovely. Oops. I like it down here normally. Notice exactly the same, exactly the same stuff's available to people over in Eclipse as it is in Visual Studio. New build definition, we'll say Java build. If my keyboard will come back to me. Oh, that's not good. Running an SSD. Always worry when you're running an SSD because, oh no, there we go. Java build, there we are. Java build 1. Trigger, we'll make this continuous integration. Workspace, what do you want to build? I want to build my Java project this time. And you could build both things. You could, if you wanted to, build the Java project and the .NET project, but that would require a little bit of customization. So what did we say? MWVS 2010 /drops/Java. How do you want to build? Now, it's no good giving a solution file. Java people don't have solution files. They use things called Ant and Maven as two common ways of building Java stuff. So we'll point at an Ant build script. It found the first Ant build script in there. So there you go. Hit OK. Right-click on that. Queue new build. Queue. And you see here again in Eclipse, I can look at the build results. I could come in here. I could actually see that my .NET build's finished, and I'm in Eclipse. I could double-click on that, go look at the build results. You probably want to be doing that from Visual Studio, so we'll go and look at the build results. And here it will tell you more about your build, what actually happened in the build. So you can see that it compiled, it ran a bunch of unit tests, it downloaded, got a bunch of unit test results, that sort of thing. You can even configure it to do lots of clever stuff like test impact analysis. Go figure out which unit tests changed, which unit tests need to be run because code that they tested has changed. That's pretty amazing, all out the box. So if you go to the test management sessions, they'll talk a bit more about some of the sort of features and again the build session. Okay, fantastic. Right, just quickly show you, this is the bit that always freaks people out. You see that Java build that we did? It's given me the warnings from Ant in Visual Studio. And this is the bit that really is like just mad. Again, I work on this stuff, so apologies if I get too excited about it. But look at that. In Visual Studio, I've got the test results of my Java unit tests. It's a whole new world. What's going on? So there we go. Okay, brilliant. Yep, so that's that. Okay, so that's builds, basic build stuff. As I say, if you're just using TFS for source control, you're doing it wrong. As well as build automation, that gives you feedback as to if what I'm checking in, is good. You're getting all that value. Another bunch of functionality that can give you value is around work item tracking, around improving your process of managing work. We've got any number of sessions this week on lean and agile methodologies and all this sort of stuff. None of those are any good if you're not tracking the work somewhere and you have a single source of truth as to what is the work we're supposed to be working on. Have we done it yet? An advantage of TFS is because it adheres to this principle of bringing everything in the face of you as a developer, your work items are not in some random system, some random spreadsheet, They're there inside of Visual Studio or Eclipse. They're right there in front of you. When you do a check-in, they're right there in front of you. And the reason why I came to work for Microsoft on the TFS team was because I was in an organization where we deployed an early version of TFS. And the process, because it's now a computer system, the process came alive for the developers because it's there in Eclipse or there in Visual Studio. It's just data. It's just fields. And so they would then in meetings be like, hey, you know what? If we could change this field, because when I edit a work item, it doesn't just go from working on it to done. It kind of goes. We kind of send it over to Bob, who tests it and verifies that we've done it. And you go, okay, I'll change that field for you. We'll add an extra state of ready for QA or something like that. What you're doing is your developers are now fixing your process. Rather than the process being this dusty manual that sits on the shelf that nobody ever adheres to, it's actually a living, breathing thing that they can fix and they can improve and they can continually make better. And that's, if you can get your developers to be actively engaged in making sure your process is good and it follows what they actually do, you're onto a winner, you know. So that's why I love TFS, is because it just gets people engaged in fixing processes and making them how they work. I've been saying work items. I should have said work items. By work items, I mean items of work for a development system. So a bug, or I can't even say it in American, you know, however you would say bug, it's not in my English accent. That second one down, there you go, bug. Tasks, feedback from users, feature requests, stories, product backlog items, whatever you call them, items of work. They're stored in the same SQL database that your source code's stored in, that your build data's stored in, all stored in this one central database. Now you're collecting all this data about what you do, you can now report on it and see which part of the product we get most bugs in, which features cause most code churn after the fact. You need to be using the features first before you can get all this reporting. So, and like I say, they're there where you want them, so you can use them in Visual Studio, in Eclipse. However, I actually use them in Excel most of the time. I love Excel as a way of managing big lists of data. Another advantage of using work items in Excel, you can take the spreadsheet, go into a meeting room that's not connected to TFS, or go to a customer site, edit the work, come back, hit publish, and it synchronizes it with TFS. We also have Microsoft Project integration. Personally, when they make me install Project is when I hand in my resignation, but there you go. If you like Gantt charts, then you can do them. What's great about the Project integration is you can, you know, as a developer, because I'm a developer, as I say, I've got manager in my title, all the data about if I'm done yet is there in TFS. So project managers can just go look to see if I'm done yet. Are you done yet? Go look at TFS. And they can just feed all the data into PowerPoint. They don't need to be actively seeking data. That's just there for them. So they can then actually use TFS to do what as a project manager you want to do, which is manage, which is remove obstacles from the team, rather than just data entry and data collection. And obviously as well, you don't actually need to install Visual Studio or Eclipse or blah, blah, blah to get to talk to your work items. Not everybody wants to install something. You can just go to a website, and we ship that out the box in 2010, is this website for people to talk to. Okay, let's play with work items in the time we have left. So here we are. Now, you get into work items from the little work items node down here, you see, work items. And you come in and you have queries. You have team queries, queries that are shared between the whole team. For example, I've got some here like iteration 1. These are the ones that it created for me, TFS did, you know, when Chris created the team project for us. So, and then what bugs we have. Now, currently, we don't have any work items in the system because we've only just installed TFS. You know, less than an hour ago, we installed TFS. So, and look, here we are already. We're in work items. So I can come in, and I could, if I wanted to, just go in here and say, go in here and say new work item. And in the Agile template, these are the work items that are installed for you by default. Bugs, stories. What all these mean, you just hit help, F1, or go look at the process guidance. It'll explain the process for you of Agile. But these are the bugs, and you recognize most of them. If you wanted a work item type of ticket, if you wanted a work item type of requirement or feature, you can just create your own and check and put it into TFS and control the state of how it works. You can just do that. You can customize not only what the work item types are, what all the fields are on there, what they do, how they go between states, what the relationships are between work items, that sort of thing. So if I want, I could come in here and I could create a user story. So in Agile, your features and requirements are documented as stories. So I'll say, as a TechEd attendee, I want to know how to use TFS. There we go, nearly correctly spelt. All these features, all this stuff is completely customizable. So this is what's out of the box. So I can give it some acceptance criteria. I want to know how to do stuff. Okay. And you would normally give more measurable acceptance criteria there that you agree with your customers. There you go. And so we'll save that, we'll assign it to me, and actually let's, I've just hit Control S to save. And then I'm going to come in, and you see here in the history, it shows me created by Martin and some fields. I'm going to come in here and set the iteration to be iteration 1. So this is something we want to work on. Hit Control S. And look, we have a single source of truth. Our work items are audited down here. It tells us who edited it when. Yes, this requirement did say this, but now it says this, and you changed it to that kind of thing. What did you change? All that sort of stuff. Fully audited. So that's good. Now, if we wanted to, we could come in here and create child tasks and all sorts of things like that. But what I might actually do is, because I like Excel, my first job was actually as what's called a macro monkey in the city. So I was in a bank and I would sit running Excel simulations next to a trader to try and give them, some information really quick. So a macro monkey. So I'm going to come in here. I preferred Macro Man because that had a song to go with it, you know what I mean? But yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to right click on this and I'm going to say new work items with Microsoft Excel. So if I wanted to, I could just right click and it would bring me up in Excel and it would bring me up it'd connect the spreadsheet to TFS for me and it would let me input some stuff. So I'm going to say do stuff. No. Task 1, work item type, task, assigned to Martin. And you've got drop-down controls here as well. You have drop-down controls here as well to pick a name, but I'm the only one installed on this machine, so task 2. That's all very good. Yeah, Martin. Yeah, very well. So I've created a couple of tasks. Oops, sorry, don't want to save it. I've got a couple of tasks there. I can then go here, hit publish, and that sends them into Team Foundation server. So if I go back in and look at my tasks, they're those 2 tasks I just created in Excel. I could even come in here and you see the iteration backlog. So what work do we have to do? I could open that, what work do we have to do in this iteration? Double click on that. It show you we've only got currently 1 story assigned to us. I could come in and I could right click and I'll say open tree in Excel. And if you want it in a meeting and you want to break down your stories into tasks, which is quite a common scenario, you come in here and you just say add child and it adds a child. So demo VSS migration, Martin, and that's a type of task. Oops. Task. What else do I want? I want another task of demo Excel integration. Assign it to me. There you go. And now I've suddenly realized, you know what, I could do with another story as well. So I can just come in here and I could just add another user story. But if I put the title in the first column, so I'll say fill out evals. There you go, as a user story. Assign it again to me, and then I can assign a task underneath that of scan tag thingy. Okay. There we go, blah, blah, blah. There we go, hit publish. And that creates some, including, scan tag thingy, not published. Oh, I haven't given it a work item type. Task. There we go. That then goes and creates the work items and creates the hierarchical relationships between them. Cool? Yes, sir. Yes, the work items are set out in projects, and then a work item belongs to a team project. Can I grab this one after the session, just quickly? Because we've got just a minute to wrap up, and then I'll grab this one. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I just looked at the clock there. So my call to action, was quickly start to use TFS. These are the list of sessions to go to if you're interested. I'll bring back this sheet in a minute as we finish. And there's some hands-on labs, so you can actually go play with the stuff. There's a certification exam on TFS administration, and come see us at the booth. That's where I'll be for the rest of the week when I'm not talking more. Blah, 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 blah. Remember to fill out your evals.
the comments are what I read. The scores are what my bosses read, but the comments are what I read. So, any comments, and that'd be great. Okay. There we go. So I'll put that one up if everyone's interested in. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll take questions, and then I'll take more questions at the booth. So thank you.